Alright guys, welcome to another video, and today we'll be going through how to solve inequalities. So this will be the first lesson of Unit 3. So when solving inequalities, it's very similar to solving equations in the steps and getting the answer. You always, like in solving equations, you always try to isolate the variable. So that's what we'll be doing here in today's lesson. And the only difference, like the main difference, is you'll be seeing inequality symbols, which will result in different types of answers. And you can even put the answers in different ways. Like several ways you can put it into like a normal inequality form, like x is less than 2, for example, right? You can also put it in an interval notation, which we'll be exploring, which is basically like putting in like a coordinate form. And lastly, you can put it into like a line, right? Like you can make it into its own graph, like any type of equation. And we'll be doing that next video. But for today, we'll be solving inequalities and putting them into interval notation and also putting them into normal inequality notation. So without further ado, let's get started with the first question. So the first question that we have says 3x plus 2 is less than or equal to 8, right? So let's rewrite the equation or inequality. 3x plus 2 is less than or equal to 8. From here, we isolate the variables, so we subtract 2 on both sides. So basically, we're moving the variables to one side of the inequality and moving the constants to the other side. So we'll have 3x is less than or equal to 6. And after that, you divide by 3 on both sides, so you'll have x is less than or equal to 2. And so yeah, that's the answer. So this is a very simple question, but now let's put it into interval form. Or interval notation. So basically when you put into interval notation, you basically put in like a coordinate. But here's something to remember. Usually when you have a coordinate, you put in parentheses, right? Parentheses x, parentheses x, comma, y, close parentheses. That's a normal coordinate, right? But when you actually put it into like an inequality or interval form, you have to make sure that you know like what you're doing, right? So you see here, it's a less than or equal to. So that means x is going to the left. And so it's basically going to infinity. It starts at infinity and goes all the way to 2. So x is less than or equal to 2, right? So you'll write negative infinity because it's negative. Always on the left side you'll put a negative. And whenever the x coordinate is negative, or I mean if it's infinity, it's always a parenthesis on the left side. And then after that, on the right side, the y coordinate, you put the number, which is 2. So you'll write 2. Alright, so yeah, that's basically it. So except, remember, whenever you have an equal to sign in the equation, x is less than or equal to or x is greater than or equal to, whichever side the constant is on, that one has to have a bracket instead of parentheses. So that will be your final coordinate form. So it'll be parentheses and then infinity, negative infinity in this case, comma 2, and then bracket. So it might not make sense at first, but when we get through a few more questions, it'll start to make sense. Alright, so let's go to the next question. So we have 2x, we have 2x, so let's move it here. 2x minus 1 is less than 3x plus 5. So this is basically when you have two variables. I mean, you have one variable, but it's on both sides. So you do the same thing. So let's subtract 3x on both sides. So you'll have negative x, negative x minus 1, and then is less than 5. And then keep isolating the variable. So now you'll add 1 to both sides. So you have negative x is less than 6. And then from there, you'll divide by negative 1. So here's where it is. Whenever you divide or multiply by a negative value on both sides, you always have to make sure to flip the sign. Always make sure. That's very important. So if you guys want, you can make a flashcard of this. It's very important. So when you multiply or divide by a negative number, on either side, you always have to switch the sign. So when we're technically dividing by -1 here, right? So like let's make this a -1. So this is the same thing as, if you divide by -1, you'll have x is greater than, because remember we're flipping the sign, x is greater than -6, right? And so that'll be your final answer. Alright? So for this one, let's put it in integral form or integral notation now. So this side, this time it's greater than, not less than, right? The last question was less than or equal to. This time it's greater than. So for this one, since it's -6 is less than x, or x is greater than -6, you flip the two coordinates. So infinity will now be on the y coordinate. But if it's less than, infinity will be the x coordinate. Always remember that. Make a flashcard of that if you need to. Infinity is always on the x coordinate if it's less than or equal to. But infinity will be as a y coordinate if it's greater than or equal to. So we have greater than here. So we'll have -6 as the x coordinate, right? And so for this one, since there's no equal to sign, it'll be a parentheses, and then a -6, comma, infinity. And you might be wondering, why did you not put negative infinity? But like I said, right, whenever infinity is as the x coordinate, it'll be negative. But when it's at the y coordinate, it'll always be positive. So make a flashcard of that as well if you need to. And so always following infinity will be a parentheses. So that'll be your final coordinate form. Alright, let's move on to the next question. So now we have 4 times, just to save space, I'm not going to rewrite the equation, but, inequality, but, so the question is 4 times parentheses 1 minus x is greater than 2 times parentheses r plus 3. So, for this one, let's first distribute. So, we have 4, let's move this over here. 4 times 1 minus x is greater than, I'm just going to rewrite the equation because I think this is supposed to say 2 times x plus 3. It's supposed to say 2 times x plus 3. We're not ready to do 2 variables yet because we only have one equation. So this is the actual equation. 4 times 1 minus x is greater than 2 times x plus 3. So from here we distribute 4 into 1 and negative x, so it'll be 4 minus 4x is greater than 2, and then you do the same thing on the right side, so 2x plus 6, and then from here you subtract by 2, so you'll have 4 minus 6x, you're subtracting 2x on both sides, right? And then you carry over this plus 6. And remember, you only need to flip the sign if you're multiplying or dividing by a negative number, not if you're adding or subtracting by a negative number. So from here you subtract 4, so you have negative 6x is greater than 2, right? Did I do that right? I think so, yeah. And then from here you'll have x is less than, remember, because we're flipping the sign, x is less than negative 1/3. And so this is our final answer. Now let's put it into integral form. So in order to put it into integral form, we have a less than, right? So infinity will be on the x coordinate. So it would be negative infinity. So parentheses, negative infinity, comma, and then we have negative 1/3, right? That'll be our y coordinate. And remember, so it's not equal to, right? It's just a less than. So then it wouldn't be a bracket, it would just be normal parentheses. So we'll have negative 1/3 parentheses. And that's your final interval notation. So let's do one more problem. So we see here that we're dealing with decimals, right? Decimals are the same thing, like you do the same thing, there's no difference. They look intimidating, but they're really not. So for this one, we have, let's subtract by 2.8 on both sides. So 2.7x minus 2.8x is negative 0.1x. Oops, move this over here. Negative 0.1x, and then minus 6.4 is greater than or equal to negative 4.6. from here you would add 6.4 to both sides, so you'll have negative 0.1x is greater than or equal to, it's at 1.8, right? Did I do that right? I think so, yeah. Alright, and then from here we divide by negative 0.1x, and just by negative 0.1, because that's your coefficient. And so x is less than or equal to negative 0.18. Let me see if I did that right. Yeah, okay. And then from here, you just have to put in an interval notation. So to do that, you'll just put the parentheses. So we see that it's less than or equal to, so it should be you'll have parentheses, or no, you'd have parentheses because it's less than. So parentheses. You'd have parentheses, negative infinity, comma, negative 0.18, and then brackets, because you'll have an equal to sign, right? So it'll be brackets. Put that there. Alright. So yeah, that's basically it. So, oops, I think this is supposed to say. This is supposed to be negative 18. I don't know why I thought that 1.8 divided by negative 0.1 is negative 0.18, but it's not. So, yeah, that's basically it, guys. So, yeah, that's solving inequalities. And I'll see you guys in the next video, which will be graphing inequalities. And so in graphing inequalities, we'll be going over like how to show it, after solving the inequalities, how to basically portray it in a graph, and it'll be slightly different than what you would imagine. So yeah, see you guys in the next video. Thanks.